Good morning, Wellspring. Oh, you can do better than that. Excellent day. Okay. My name is Judy Bethman, and I'm part of your Sunday service team for April 16th. Early birds meet Sunday mornings from 9:30 via Zoom, and the link is in the weekly email and on the website. And I hear they have rip-roaring discussion in early birds. Good. Upcoming speakers for April. Well, we think Reverend Kamatara might be, she has kidney stones and her surgery is on the 19th. So we don't know if she'll be able to preach that Sunday or not. So our beloved Dr. Edward will step in her stead if that be the case. And Reverend Bonnie will be preaching on the 30th. Won't that be nice? All right. The Thursday evening group meets every Thursday at 7 p.m. Not too late to join. Each week, a different speaker and discussion is afterward. The series will be talks by such well-known authors as Lisa Rankin, Dr. Mike Dow, Lynn McTaggart, Sue Mortar, followed by lively discussion in person in the social hall or on Zoom. Talk to Edward or Cleona for more information. Well, next Sunday is our April event. We're having an ice cream social and movie matinee. And the movie is called The Shack. I have not seen that. I don't know anything about it, so I'm looking forward to that. It's at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Ice cream to follow the matinee. The New Thought Ladies Luncheon will be Thursday, April 27th, 11:30 at CSL. And lastly, our prayer team remains ready to serve and support you. You may submit a request via our webpage or give it to Edward. Our prayer team meets every Tuesday afternoons at 4:15 to pray with you. Please consider sitting in your quiet space during that time. We know we are one in spirit, and the energy of prayer knows no limits. It would be nice just to sit in your quiet space for a time anyway, even if, just taking breaths. All right. Let us take a deep breath inward and release. And in our next breath, let's invite Spirit in our whole bodies into this sacred place, into our universe. Breathe in and release. Great Spirit, Mother, Father, God, we thank you for your constant endurance of our frailties and our successes. We know that you are ever all about us, and we know that even though we are separate individuals, we are one within you, within your consciousness. For this, we are extremely blessed, and we thank you. And let us say, and so it is. Okay, please stand if you are able, and let's sing I Am the Thinker.
Wisdom
be seated. Boy, you're in fine voice today. You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, let us read our vision, mission, and affirmation. Our vision is to elevate spiritual consciousness in our world. Our mission is to support individual spiritual quests through celebration, study, counsel, loving fellowship, and service. Our affirmation. The blooming of flowers and trees around shows us that spirit expresses effortlessly in nature. We affirm and acknowledge that same spirit expresses through each of us, bringing our magnificence forward for all to see. And so it is. And it's my delight to welcome back Doug Adamz.
The egg, the rabbit, the tortoise, the hare. Today, a leaf on a branch that was bare. Soon all of the branches on all of the trees will be covered with green and bird nest and bees. Bees that buzz and birds that trill, returned from their flight from the long winter's chill. Yes, they trill and they tweet and they chirp and they squawk and they flutter for cover at the sight of a hawk. Easter, Passover, the phoenix, Aphrodite, traditions and religions, some forgotten, some still mighty. We've all harmonized with the earth and her spinning, long before the time known as in the beginning. The stone rolled away, there's an angel by the cave. A flower sprouts from a cactus and out of a grave. And the lads still sing loud for their maidens fair, the glory of the girl with the flowers in her hair. And Aries wheels by and declares, I am number one in this procession. I'll return to life again. And the clouds play leapfrog, and the frogs pray for rain. And everyone knows that it's springtime again. Yes, the clouds play leapfrog, and the frogs sing for rain. And everyone knows that it's springtime again.
Thanks a lot. I don't know about you, but I was visualing all those things as he was singing it. Thank you. Today's reading is coming, it's like a foretelling of the May Science of Mind magazine. And it, under Philosophy in Action, the title is Care of Our Consciousness. Spring is a beautiful season that teaches us much about the cycle of life and the nature of consciousness. This month's speech from Dr. Ernest Holmes is a transcript from his radio show, This Thing Called Life. And within it is a poetic invitation to raise our level of mindfulness on the principle of giving and receiving. Just like the trees, flora, and fauna around us, we see that life gives to us in accordance with what we give to it. The principle is simple enough. Breathing in, breathing out, what we think about, we tend to bring about. Holmes said, today the world is as good as you make it or as evil as you think it, which is something I think we should consider, not just from the individual experience, as Holmes skillfully does, but also from a collective point of view. Today, our shared world is as good as we make it or as evil as we think it. We already know from the practice of this teaching that each one of us contributes to the collective experience through the use we make of our consciousness and spiritual practices. Many in our teaching seek to apply what we've come to trust and rely on at the individual level to challenges in the social ills at the collective level. When so-called culture wars topics rise to fever pitch in our social discourse, we find it easy enough to choose a personal path to peace by saying, I don't engage in such. Or we choose to only think of the positive, thereby avoiding all that wallows in evil or negative thinking. But what if revealing a world that works for everyone requires more from us? To make something is to participate in its creation. Pies don't think their way into the oven. They are made by the care of our consciousness and the skill of our hands. The world is and can only be as good as we make or actively participate in making it. So perhaps it's time to add to our positive thoughts, the skillful action of making the world a better place. Travel well. Okay. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce Reverend Peggy Shinn.
Anyway, good morning, Wellspring. We're springing into spring this morning, it sounds like, right? Wellspring and all. I am happy to be here, happy to be back talking to you all. I am not back from Mexico, as you might think that I'm in that realm, but I haven't been able to go yet. So this is part of, I guess, the motivation for my topic today, because I've kind of concluded that I needed to talk about what I thought I needed to talk about, because I need to hear myself say it to myself. That's partly what I always say. I'm up here for me. If you get something out of it, great. But this is part of my spiritual practice to share with you, you know, my deepest thoughts and character defects and all of that. So the title of my talk today is Growing Through What We're Going Through. My youngest sister and I, she lives in Missouri, back again in Missouri. We're not in the town where we grew up, but we grew up in the state of Missouri. Show me, right? Anyway, we were having a little lament about the societal and cultural kinds of issues that we were thinking we're experiencing and seeing going on, as Judy was talking about in her reading there. But when we fall into those things, that apparently the reading is kind of urging us to turn around and think more positively about things. And ignore these ideas that there is evil. Well, my sister and I were not talking about evil, but we were basically just talking about how we are evaluating, or what we think we're seeing is what's changed, or what's happening, in part of what our conversation was about. And it seems like, to us at any rate, that there's a lot of things that are showing up out there as the results of experiences that individuals and collective societies and cultures are having, that are different responses than we in our old age, can look back on and recognize are different to similar sets of circumstances, but the response is now showing up to us, at any rate, in our observation of the appearance of it, as a little bit, different response. Anyway, the bottom line to our conversation was that we sort of concluded that we think that part of what's changed over the years, and I must parenthetically say that my sister has a master's degree in early childhood education, and she runs a school that is a lab as well for teaching teachers of children, early childhood level, programs. So she has a school where she's teaching the teachers, but they also have the lab there where they have the daycare and the kids that come, and it's on hands-on kind of practice, right? So one of the things that we were looking at and concluding is that over time, it seems that in our culture, rather than cultivating mental and emotional resilience to these quote-unquote tough times, or appearances of challenges, I think that was the word in your reading, the challenge, that instead of cultivating resilience in ourselves and in our children, we kind of been running away from anything that, or maybe ignoring or denying or spiritual bypassing the things that could have been serving us if we would only have allowed ourselves to grow through what we were going through, instead of ignoring or denying or spiritual bypassing it by not going through it and trying to go around it or going through some detour. Well, that's my situation here. I've stayed in the States because I have to grow through what I'm going through, rather than run off to Mexico and have a good time and escape it all and put my convention together and forget about what's happening here. So this is kind of how we concluded that this is a part of what we think is different in how the results are showing up differently to us, at any rate, of certain things that are going on out there, especially in our collective culture in the Western society. So I've been thinking about this since I had the conversation with my sister a couple weeks ago about this idea of resilience, and the possibility that we could allow the problems that we believe we are seeing to become either the or part of the solutions. And that, to me, is the turnaround from the negative to the positive thinking that Judy's reading to us about in the reading today. So I really believe, as I've been thinking about it, that resilience is sort of the end result of the process of resistance. And that preparedness, which is a kind of thing that resilience is related to, that when something goes off the rails or happens to us or happens through us or happens as us, no matter how you want to look at it, the result might not have been at first blush what we wanted or what we thought we preferred or who we thought we were. And instead, we also could go back to the spiritual practices that Judy was reading to us about, because I believe that the other aspect to response to something that is a shock or something that is a problem or that something isn't what was desired is not only the resilience to move through it and grow through it, and build more resilience for the future in that process, but it's also in our world of spiritual practices what I called preparedness that comes from preparedness. So if we're prayed up, if we're staying with our practices and keeping our eye on the prize, it's a whole lot easier to be resilient, and to move through in whatever fashion, growing through what we're going through. That faith muscle gets built so that in those moments we're able to be the mystical in the group. You know, we're able to be what the Course in Miracles calls the presence of the alternative. That we are prayed up and we know God is in everything, that all there is God, and we can choose the option to speed up the acceleration of the evolution on the planet through our consciousness and the collective consciousness, rather than sitting around and just being fed up about what we are not happy that we think we see. So if we've chosen to see in that experience the need for pivot and shift and change, we're back to Gandhi again. And I think this was the end comment of the writer of the article about Ernest Holmes' talk on this thing called You, that Judy read to us about. Take an action. Make it. Don't just think it. So I think to build resistance, as I've been considering, you know, what it's all about, that we really must go through what we're going through, because that is there for a reason. As Ernest has taught us, nothing by chance, nothing by mistake. It's all there to serve us and whatever the greater good is that we may not really understand or conceive of at the moment, maybe not even ever conceive of what it was about. But I think we're all in this room of a certain age that we can look back on our lives and see some of the stuff that was like the pile of shit that became the pony, right? We realize in retrospect that there are things that had to kind of happen to us in order for other things to happen through us. And in the Science of Mind text, which I brought with me today, but I got it in my notes here, so I'm going to read from them rather than fumble through the book. But in the first part of the book, Ernest hits this idea of pain and suffering full on. And I think because he realized that when people are going to pick up this thing here, they're not going to go through it all. They don't get out of their idea that, well, where's this guy going to fix me? How am I going to get the pain down? Where's the suffering going to end? You know? And so he has a chapter in there called The Body that starts at, you know, the early 90s pages. So it's fairly early on after we go through, you know, we're getting ready to do the thing itself and what it is and how it works and all that kind of stuff. Those first 4 chapters. He says on page 103, paragraph 3, in the 47 version of the text, which is really the one I use, Holmes says that we should not separate life with a capital L, is that right for you all? Yeah, L, from living. That we must live our lives because we can't otherwise do it. So he says that we can't separate life from living, or spirit from matter, or principle from universal creation. Judy read to us some about this creative process and creation in her reading today too. And this is where, in the first time that I know where it appears in the book, that he says, God is all in all. And I think you can take those 3 words and just toss them around with emphasis all the 3 different ways, or 10, 20 different ways, you know. All in all. All in all. All in all. And there's no way of like escaping it after that, right? We can't turn that around and make something else out of it. It's just so simple and direct that all is all. And God is in, and he has that in italics in the book, the word in. God is in everything. So where do we separate ourselves from that belief that we believe in our daily lives by deciding not to see God in everything? Because it just don't suit me, you know, at the moment. And I am able then to just set aside and do the bypass around it or whatever and say, well, no, that, you know, except that one. Or, you know, I love everybody except Hitler, you know, that kind of thing. So later on in the book, when he talks a little bit more about pain again, he says, God is in the pain. So whatever I'm going through, I'm growing through, and I'm growing through that pain because God is all in everything. And in his chapter in the body, still, he's talking about the body, and by deduction, I would say bodily pain, because that's sometimes a lot of what we're going through and growing through as well, is necessary to be on this plane. So Ernest says the body is necessary. So he's working in contradiction maybe to some of the more elements of New Thought theory that say, well, you know, we got no body. The body doesn't exist. We, you know, the body doesn't serve any purpose. We don't, you know, we're just ready to be rid of it or whatever. He says it is necessary to this plane to function on this plane. And I believe that that was in Judy's reading today too, that we are actually not going to think the pie into the oven. It's our thought that creates the idea of having the pie, because as we know, not everything is created twice. First in thought and then in form. But that pie ain't going to get the apples peeled or put together the you know, the ingredients. It's our hands and our eyes and our ovens, and you know, it's all the physical form elements that are there that can cooperate and collaborate to create the creation of whatever it is that's been thunk. You know. So what is this growth thing? What is this growth of growing through? Well, I don't know if any of you guys were around at the time and you might have heard her say this, but one of my teachers, Reverend Sandy Scott, taught me that grow, G-R-O-W, is just the word ow, O-W, with a couple letters in front of it. And she used to say the word sometimes growth instead of growth, right? I don't know, you know. And so I think that what I learned from that with her is that our role or our goal and role as mental scientists is to turn the ow, the O-W, into wow, W-O-W, right? That's what we want to get away from the negative and over to the positive. And how can we make that transformation truly be a transformation? Because what I feel is that if we just like paint a smile on and say, well, this is nothing, and I don't do that, and I'm not listening to this, and I don't pay any attention to that, and all those things can be true, and they will be helpful not to do those things, but to ignore them. And like Ernest teaches us about pain and disease, it's not about our denying the existence of the reality of the pain or of the disease. What we choose to change or to ignore or to deny is that it has to happen, that there is a necessity for these things. Not by saying, oh, you just think you don't feel well, or, you know, that's true, you do. But the rest of it is, it's working your life in that moment. And for us to meet someone where they are and help them to get to where they want to be, or us to get ourselves to where we want to be, it's not all that helpful to ignore these things or deny them. And so when we do that, I feel like moving from the ow to the wow is a sort of a hollow victory, or it's very short-lived. It doesn't become a part of who we are because we didn't grow through it as we were going through it, because we didn't go through it. And so to me, I'm going to move from ow to wow in a better fashion if I recognize that there needs to be this transformation. And so what I'm looking at when I was thinking about this, and just playing with the words, because you know I love to play with words, that this is where I add on to the O-W, the owl part, another couple of letters other than the GR for grow. And those would be KN for no. And in that same process, we are transforming how we say the word, how we pronounce the word, how we allow that word to mean something for us, which is pretty far away from ow. And yet, when you think about it, as I was thinking about it, if you share my thought process there, That's really the only, about the only way we get to the no, is we learn through experience, mostly our own. Sometimes we're able to be smart enough to adopt the knowledge and the wisdom that came from someone else's experience, but in truth, the mostly what we know and what we believe that we believe comes from what we've experienced firsthand. And so I'm looking at what is the process of growing through what I'm going through to get from the ow to the no, involves a now and a how. So I'll put one letter in front of the OW to recognize that I have to be here in the now, and I have to allow the how part to show up. Because, you know, all I'm able to do, as I believe the way it works, is I can identify the what, but the how's up to God. The how's up to the process. The how's up to the universe. It's going to show up if I have identified what it is that I want to do in this growing through what I'm going through. So we've likely all heard this phrase about no pain, no gain. That, you know, came around, I think, in the 80s sometimes, back there. That was kind of focused around the, you know, personal fitness and sports training arena. But the metaphor carried over into life in general. And one of the things that I think oftentimes we hear in Science of Mind or in New Thought is that, well, we don't have to have the pain to get the gain. So we kind of poo-poo that thought. And I think that it's true to a large extent. But what we're finding out in more recent science is that there are things that are bodily elements to our life in this physical fitness arena that without a little bit of the pain, you really don't get the gain. And I do think that we're coming to a place now where we're learning that not only is it a body-mind connection where the mind has more dominance, I guess we'd call it, over how the body's working and how the body's feeling and all of that, but we're also learning that it's a two-way highway, and the body's communicating back to the mind. And these are a loop fashion that we don't want to leave out, the part where the body is communicating. So in that whole idea of the sports training arena, the way that they get to the growth, if you're going to the gym and you're exercising your muscles, they say that you've got to exhaust that muscle. You've got to get to that pain level or that burn level, which is causing actually a little injury to your muscle. But it's that little injury, that little trauma, that is actually activating within the body a process of healing where you end up with that muscle grew. That muscle got bigger and stronger because of that stressor. And that what they're telling us with the scientific studies is that these little stressors to the body are an important aspect of growing through what you're going through at the physical level. So, you know, I was asking myself, and I'll just ask you rhetorically the question about, you know, what if how our biology and our physiology are informing our mentality and our emotionality in as much as we've always thought it was the other way around? I'm beginning to think that, you know, the body and the physiology of the body and the message and information system that we're learning more and more and more about how the body works with that energy that is the information that's coming in, and the energy from everything that's happening, the feelings, the thoughts, the nutrition, you know, whatever we're putting in through this physiology, in through this body, has a big influence or impact on it. So there are all these studies and theories out there now that I'm being exposed to in recent years that the body benefits from these small shocks. And now the psychology world is coming into the same idea that, you know, you build resilience, you build character, you build growth in that mental and emotional and spiritual sense from having a little upset every now and then, a little stressor of some sort, an element that is a quick trauma. And, you know, so we see the people in the physiological world doing the little stressors, the little traumas, jumping into the cold water, or letting the bees sting them, or holding their breath to deprive themselves of oxygen, or fasting from eating food. The things that give the body a little bit of a oomph, a shock that causes it to activate chemical and energetic elements within our system that end up improving the body's function, ultimately. That function that Ernest said we have to be here for, that we are here for, that we have to be here for. And the other question that I was asking myself, so maybe human existence and human evolution actually are meant to be kind of bittersweet. It isn't all, the old bed of roses or the bowl of cherries that we've heard about in songs. And maybe sometimes there is a necessary element to the struggle. And accepting that rather than resisting or pushing back, or getting over the resistance fairly quickly to allow ourselves to build that growth. And maybe there is this interweaving of pain, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual pain, that is at our level individually and at our culture and our society collectively, which gets back to what Judy's reading to us about too, that there has to be this yin and yang of the pain that pushes and the passion that pulls to move us forward, to gain momentum, to overcome the inertia, to take the action that's in front of us to do. Maybe that's the way it really works. So just, I don't know. I don't have the answer. I'm just asking myself the questions and sharing them with you. But we get to nature, which we've talked about in the song that Doug sang, and also in the reading that Judy gave us, where we're springing into spring here, that we watch nature and we see what is going on there. Of course, I think for a long time, human beings on the planet have forgotten that they are actually part of nature. We are animals, And that gets kind of lost in the process where we look at nature like it's something out there that we're separate from. But nature shows us this same pattern of having the little setback or the shock or the change, the chill, I think is what you had in your song. The birds leave for the chill of the winter. So this pattern is the pruning of trees that forces them, to activate the thing in their physiological system that makes them grow new growth. Forest fires regenerate the forest. Butterflies can't be helped out of the chrysalis. If they don't beat that cocoon out, they don't build the strength in their wings to fly. These are the elements that I thought about in nature that lead me to perceive that, well, why would we be exempted as human beings? The birds and the reptiles, or in Doug's song, they've got to break out of the shell. There has to be this sort of element of pushing back or resistance that creates the growth and the resilience to go on to the next level and the next level and the next level. So, but back to moving our pain from the ow to the wow, and on into the no. There is a part in the book that I was reading where Ernest was talking about the body, in the part of the body, that there is an infinite becomingness that results from an infinite knowingness. I don't know that I'd ever picked up on Ernest, he sort of started to sound like Sandy Scott again, becomingness or whatever, creating and inventing these words. But I feel like to get to the no and move through the now and the how that I mentioned earlier, we might need a few little hints or help or steps. And so these are things that I thought of that I thought would help me and might help you to consider when you're not too happy about growing through what you're going through in the moment. So I always say, call AAA. So the AAA is acknowledgement, acceptance, and appreciation. If I can stand in my truth for like 30 seconds and allow my initial, to get run through my system and just acknowledge what is. Just say, okay, all right, it's here, it's happened, ain't going to change it. I might only be able to change my interpretation of it, my recollection of it, what I choose to do with it, whatever the it is, you know, fill in the blank for you. But the acknowledgement and the awareness aspect of it, to become aware of it, leads to the next A of the triple A, which is acceptance. And I feel that acceptance is the only portal to change. Because as long as I'm not willing to accept something, or someone, or some situation, or you know, again, fill in the blank, whatever it might be, I am not able to make anything change because I've got it stuck in my mind and my brain and my body and all of my being that it's this. And if I don't ask myself the questions about, well, how do you know? You know, go back to Byron Katie's, is it true? How do I know it's true? What would be the possibilities if it weren't true? I can't really move. I got my foot nailed to the floor by my own, what we call in the 12-step program, contempt prior to investigation. You know, where I've made up my mind ahead of time. I've got a preconceived idea that comes from my belief, so I'm just going to perceive what I believe. And then, whoa, like magic, I receive what I believed that I perceived. Self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So we have the acknowledgement and then the acceptance in the AAA. And then the third one to me is the next level beyond the acceptance. Appreciation. Can I get to the gratitude? Can I get to an attitude of gratitude about whatever has happened, is happening, is causing me consternation, is upsetting my apple cart today because it just isn't what I had planned? And let it go. But not just let it go. Bless it. Bless it and release it. Because that blessing allows me to get to, okay, I can appreciate that this happened. As I say, it's all for my good and nobody's misbehaving. So if I can get to that level of I may not still be happy about it, but if I can move through that process, the mental process, that will help me release the, you know, the whole physiological resistance and the emotional and spiritual upset of whatever character I might think I'm experiencing right now. Because if I can get to the gratitude, and this is what I mentioned earlier, that all of us in this room and probably on Zoom too are of a certain age where we can look back over our lives and we can probably find even more than one example of when something just seemed to go to hell in a handbasket and we were in the basket with it, and decided later, whew, gosh, if that hadn't happened, oh, I'm sorry, Edwin, I put my hand over the microphone. If that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, you know. We've all had the opportunity, if we are examining our lives at all, which, of course, you know, we learn from the philosophers that we're supposed to do that. Otherwise, we don't really have much of a life if it's unexamined, right? So in that appreciation process, if I can't say thank you, God, I might not say thank you to the person, place, or thing that's irritated me. I might not be quite ready there yet. But I know I'm going to have to get myself there. And so the sooner I let go of my big idea about whatever it was supposed to be in my thought, the faster I'm going to get to that, thank you, God. And then maybe I can get to the, you know, thanked to the person that offended me or whatever, you know. And that's really what to me is forgiveness. Forgiveness is really about gratitude and blessing. Because it's what gives us the permission to move on. Let go and let God. And then, if you've gone through the AAA and they've towed you away, you know, you have the opportunity to move to a higher level. You've what I call qualified for a higher level the next time, because you've built those building blocks of whatever the resilience was, of whatever the growth was, of growing through what you're going through. So maybe if the next time even the same thing happens again, it just whatever, you know. You don't blow up, you blow out. You know, just go and oh well, whatever. But then I go to the 3 C's. So I have the 3 A's for the AAA and then the 3 C's. So the first C is because I've come to a higher level, I'm now better able to attack the 3 C's. So the first one is contemplate. And the second one is concentrate. And the third one is consecrate. You with me? Okay. So we contemplate. So this goes back sometimes to our spiritual practices. We meditate. We take something in. You know, we've gone through the 3 A's and we've gotten to the level of, okay, now I see how this was really benefiting me and it was supposed to happen and all things are good. Nobody's misbehaving. Now what do I do with this information? How do I learn from it? Where do I get to the KNOW? The knowingness that results in the becomingness. And the other part about it is the interrogate. I call it, meditate and interrogate. Question myself. Question whatever happened, you know. Get it all through. Because that's the other part about it. You're not going to grow through it if you don't go through it. And if you don't get to the through part, you haven't handled either one. So the concentrate becomes, okay, so I've gone through the process of interrogation and contemplation and meditation, and then it's a matter of, okay, now what do I do with this? I'm not going to think it into happening exactly like the pie. It's not going in the oven unless I have the opportunity to think about what actions am I going to take, or what's going to happen here. We know that what is focused on expands. Where our attention goes, our energy flows. We know those things, right? Am I putting you guys to sleep, or are we in the right room? Yeah, okay. So, and then when we have that piece of the information there, we know we've got to go to the next level. So we feel ourselves. We do visioning, or we envision, or we do the affirmations and the prayer work to keep our attention on the high watch and to hold ourselves accountable towards that desired outcome. So we could all do that collectively too. The vision statement, the affirmations, these are not just like words on the screen that we're reading collectively. The idea is to impart them collectively into our being, for there to be a collective consciousness raising and an action that is resulting from that knowing that transforms into the becoming. And the third step is to consecrate whatever it is. You know, we put it on the altar. We give it, we put it on the altar and we give it to God at that point. And in my world, it's a matter of a couple of other elements that is part of the form and the function of things. I look down at the holy ground on which I stand, because we are all on holy ground. Everything is holy. God is all in all. And if that isn't consecration, what is it? So I remind myself that way by physically, looking down, and this is holy ground, and I am holy. I am both blessed and a blessing. Then I have it in my mind, this whole whatever I've decided and however it's come through, I look up. And that's turning it over to God. I look up with that question, with that idea in mind, with my eyes open, 45 degrees above the horizon. Try it. I've talked to you guys about this before. Try it. And just be quiet. with whatever your question or your thought is, and allow the answer to come. That's intuition. That's a formal fashion of activating intuition by looking up. You know, we don't have to just wait for the flash of the blinding flash of the obvious to hit us through our intuition. We can actually activate it by that physiological move. So this is an incorporation of the body, the mind, and the spirit to take it to that level of consecration, and then, you know, release it. Knowing it's there, just needing to be revealed by whatever I do, say, think, and others around me. We recognize this truth of what Ernest talked to us about this infinite becomingness that results from the infinite knowingness, because we know we are connected to and a part of and imbued by that infinite knowingness. And on our individual level, as well as the collective level, you know, we have what Sandy also used to teach, that I have taken on, that it's made, the overcomingness is a part of the becomingness, where she teaches that you have, that we, at the human level, we overcome and overcome and overcome until we become. And this is, to me, another way of saying we're growing through what we're going through to get to that other side of the becoming. So the social scientists and the brain scientists are teaching us today that, you know, we're pretty much the person that we were 24 hours ago, day after day after day, without a whole lot of shift or change going on. It's just like Groundhog Day over and over and over again, right? So we have to make a conscious choice in this day, in this moment, towards whatever that growth is, whatever that going through is, to move it forward and move ourselves forward with it, in order to have the next 24 hours be different than this day, right? So it's the old 12-step adage of one day at a time, and making the day count to contemplate and ultimately consecrate, you know, whatever it was from yesterday. Because sometimes we take things to the altar to leave them there to be worked on. Sometimes we take them to the altar to be burned, you know. And so my choice in this 24 hours is changing what I can and accepting what I can't, and hoping that some kind of wisdom shows up as a result. So, and that, to me, is for the triple A's and the 3 C's. That activity level, that processing of myself, that makes it possible to change that next 24 hours because I did something with the becomingness and the knowingness on today's level to get there. So I invite you to take just a moment here and decide what you might choose today to be just a little different for tomorrow. And each moment of decision in designing our day builds that momentum. Moments become momentum. So if we can think about that, these moments that become momentum, that we're consciously directing our lives in the living of them, not separating life from living, to me, is the secret to growing through what we're going through. So namaste. Thank you. So I think I'll give you a real short treatment maybe because I'm late. It looks like it's, according to your clock, it's almost noon. So we just take a deep breath in and feel ourselves in the chair, our feet on the floor, standing if you're standing like I am, and knowing that this place, this seat, this ground is holy. That we are holy on holy ground, and all we are and all we do and all we have is holy, because it is all God. God is in everything. God is all in all. All in all. And that includes ourselves as connection within us, that is the God that is in us, is part of it. We are part of the all that is all God, and that has God in all of us. No exceptions. And just breathe that in. Take in the simpleness and yet the immensity of that concept. And from this place of power, where the power within is not really the power without or from without. It is the greatest power in the universe, because it is the universe. Is us, as us, through us, around us, and for us. And from the knowingness that that power produces, we step into our co-creation process in the infinite becomingness that is the evolution of our life, our mentality, our consciousness, our spirituality, always, always becoming, always evolving. And through us, so does the collective. We accept our responsibility for the use of this power to get to the reality of the knowingness of who we are and whose we are, where we are, what we are, and how we are. And from those truths, make the decisions about what we might choose to change in our becomingness from today to tomorrow. And in great gratitude for this philosophy, for the words of Ernest that I've shared with you, that Judy shared with you, we rest in God and say, Amen.
Bless this house, O Lord, we pray. Make it safe both night and day. Bless the walls so firm and stout. Letting want and trouble out. Bless the roof and chimneys half tall. Let thy peace lie over all. Bless the door that it may prove ever open to joy and love. Bless these windows, shining bright, letting in God's heavenly light. Bless the hearth a-blazing there, with smoke ascending like a prayer. And bless the people here within, who treat the stranger as a friend. Bless us all that we may be evermore aware of thee, and bless us all that we may be evermore aware of thee.
Thanks, Doug. Let's see if I can do this. And not only this house, but bless this house. Bless the planet. Bless the universe. I've got chills. Okay. All right. No.
I was inspired. I mean, that's how I ended the treatment.
Oh.
Rest in God and say amen. And then you start to see without blessing. And it's like, I got chills.
Yeah, okay. Maybe you and I can find that Ricky Byers song. Okay. All right. Ooh, okay. As we acknowledge and receive our virtual and in-person gifts, we give great thanks for offerings already given and those we will be receiving, because we know that giving and receiving are both a part of the one flow. We affirm that we are also a part of that flow. We bless these gifts and know that they are multiplied throughout our community. There's a number of folks who've contributed to the production of this service, and we're grateful for your service. And we thank you for joining us today in Zoom land and here in the sanctuary. And lastly, stay around in Zoom meeting after the service to visit, or you can join us in the social hall. Please stand as you are able and read with me the benediction, followed by our congregational song. Spirit in the midst of us is mighty. Joy, peace, and eternal life are our true nature and flow through us into the world. And so it is.